Okay, so what if I told you that your imagination, it isn't just for escaping reality, but for actually creating it? Today, we're going to dive deep into the totally radical teachings of a guy named Neville Goddard. He believed our imagination is the very engine that builds our world.
And really, it all boils down to this one central, kind of mind-bending question, right? What if your imagination wasn't just for daydreaming? What if it was the actual workshop where your reality gets built?
All right, so the man at the heart of this pretty revolutionary idea was Neville Goddard. He was a spiritual teacher back in the 20th century, and his core teaching, it was stunningly simple but also incredibly profound. He said that our own consciousness is the one and only reality. That's it. Everything we experience on the outside, it's just a projection of what's already happening inside of us.
And Neville didn't just speak in vague terms. Not at all. He laid out a very specific principle he called the law. He claimed this was the actual mechanism for how imagination creates reality. Now, today we know it by a more famous name, the law of assumption.
Okay, so, the law of assumption. What is it really? How does it actually work? Come on, let's break it down.
So at its core, the law of assumption is this. Whatever you assume to be true, and you really, truly persist in that feeling, that assumption, it will eventually harden into a cold, hard fact in your world. But here's the real kicker, the key insight. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you fundamentally believe you are. Okay, now this is where it gets really different from the more famous law of attraction. The law of attraction kind of suggests you're like a magnet, right? You're operating from a place of wanting something, trying to pull things to you. But the law of assumption, whoa, it makes this totally radical shift. It says there's nothing external to attract. The world is just a giant mirror, reflecting what's already true inside of you. So you're not attracting it from a place of lack, you simply are it. And the world, well, it has no choice but to change and conform to your new state of being. Every great teacher usually has a teacher of their own, right? And for Neville, that figure was this mysterious and, by all accounts, brilliant man named Abdullah. And their first meeting, wow, it sounds like something straight out of a movie. So it's 1931, right? Neville goes to one of Abdullah's lectures. And afterwards, Abdullah walks right up to him and says, "Neville, you are 6 months late." Neville is, of course, completely stunned. He asks him how he even knew his name, and Abdullah just replies, "The brothers told me you were coming." In Abdullah's teaching, it really all boiled down to one incredibly powerful instruction. Live as though you are already there. Now, he wasn't telling Neville to just, pretend or play make-believe. No, he was telling him to literally embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That is the law of assumption in action.
And boy, did Neville get a powerful lesson in how this works, and fast. So back in 1933, he's broke in New York City, but he's just desperate to go home to his family in Barbados for Christmas. Abdullah's instruction was simple. You are in Barbados. For weeks, nothing happened. Neville started doubting, but Abdullah was firm. He told him to walk the streets of New York City, but feel the sand and sun of Barbados. And then, on December 4th, completely out of the blue, a letter shows up from his brother. Inside, money and a first-class ticket. Just like that.
Okay, I know. This all sounds pretty incredible, right? Well, Neville knew that too. He didn't want his students to just take his word for it. So he gave them this simple, really low-stakes experiment they could do to prove it to themselves. He called it the ladder experiment. All right, here's how it works. For 3 nights in a row, right as you're drifting off to sleep, you have to vividly imagine that you're climbing a ladder. And you're supposed to feel the rungs in your hands, feel the steps under your feet. And here's the crazy twist. During the day, you consciously do the opposite. You write notes that say, "I will not climb a ladder," and you put them where you'll see them all the time. So what's the point of this, this paradox? Well, it's designed to prove one thing, that the feeling state you impress on your subconscious mind is way, way more powerful than your conscious thoughts, your intentions, or even your willpower. It's about showing that imagination, not effort, is the real creative force. So yeah, the ladder experiment really shows that the subconscious mind is where all the real work happens. It totally makes sense then that Neville's main technique is designed to get you directly into that state.
He called it SATS. That stands for state akin to sleep. And you know exactly what this is. It's that drowsy, floaty feeling right before you conk out or right as you're waking up. That's the sweet spot. And why is it so important? Well, because in that little hypnotic window, your conscious mind, the part that doubts and analyzes everything to death, it finally goes quiet. And that leaves the door to your subconscious just wide open.
So to use SATs effectively, here's what you do. You create a super short scene, we're talking just a few seconds long, that implies your desire is already a done deal. Maybe it's a friend congratulating you, or you're holding the keys to your new house. It just has to feel natural to you. Then, as you're in that drowsy SAT state, you just loop that little scene over and over and over, really engaging your senses until that imagined act feels completely, totally real.
Ultimately, this entire philosophy can be summed up in one of Neville's most powerful quotes. He said, "You are already that which you want to be, and your refusal to believe this is the only reason you do not see it." Think about that. The only barrier, he argued, is our own refusal to just accept the new reality as true.
So let's end with a question for you. If Neville is right, if the world really is just yourself pushed out, just a perfect mirror of your inner state, what are you assuming to be true about yourself and about your life right at this very moment?